Hello and welcome back to the Masonic Roundtable, a weekly program where Masons from around the world get together to talk about Masonic news and opinions in a friendly and social manner. The standard disclaimer applies. The thoughts and opinions expressed here are solely the opinions of the participants and do not represent any Grand Lodge statements or positions. Make sure you keep your conversations open for the public and on the level. To interact with us, send questions and comments to our Twitter page at Mason Roundtable or on the Facebook event page for this episode, episode 154, Morality. As usual, my name is John Ruart, past master of the Patriot Lodge number 1957 in Fairfax, Virginia. And then I will hand it off to Robert. Go ahead, Robert.
Hey guys, RJ Robert Johnson from Waukegan Lodge number 78 in Arcadian Waukegan. And I'm a sitting secretary and past master there. Thanks, John.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Juan Sepulveda.
Hello, good evening. Juan Sepulveda here from Orange Blossom Lodge number 80 in Kissimmee, Florida, and the host of the Winding Stairs Freemasonry podcast.
Thank you, Juan. Last but not least, Jason Richards.
Hey everybody, Jason Richards here, Worshipful Master of Acacia Lodge number 16 in big time Gliston, Virginia.
Great. Okay, let's get right into Masonic news this week, and we'll start off with the big event we've been hyping up for the past couple of weeks, and we'll be brief because if you haven't heard about it by now, now's your chance to go to the biggest celebration of 300 years of Masonry right here in the continental United States, and that is 300 Freemasonry's Legacy, Freemasonry's Future, held on the actual day. That is June 24th, 2017, 300 years of Freemasonry, where the TMR hosts will be holding a celebration, a Masonic conference to end all conferences. We do have great events like Masonic Con coming up, but this one will be a little bit the same, a little bit different, but it's not your grandfather's Masonic conference. This is not about collars and titles. This is about celebrating as a fraternity what we've created. Guys, want to chime in on anything else on that?
Yes. It's going to be amazing. I mean, this for a lot of guys, this is going to be the biggest Masonic event you'll go to in your lifetime. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's it. So
you'll have only to go to the 300-year celebration, and it's this year, and we're going to be there, and we want you to be there. Now, imagine we're going to be geeking it out, Freemasonry 24/7 in the Capitol. You can't miss it.
Good
Yeah,
stuff.
it's going to be great. Buy your tickets now.
Get tickets. You go to www.themasonic.roundtable.com/300. Pretty easy to remember, and it'll route you to where you can buy tickets. But get them now because we are locking in prices for our venues and our speakers, so the prices will go up over the next couple months.
And come ready to participate. We're not going to make you sit in a seat and listen to a bunch of people pontificate for 8 hours. This is not the way it's going to work.
You're going to pontificate for 8 hours.
I would do that anyway.
You know, it's going to be really cool. I mean, just imagine where we've got, let's just say, 10 tables, and at each table, we draw a topic out of a hat that we've all maybe whiteboarded some common issues that maybe we're dealing with, and somebody draws a name out of a hat or a topic, and you go for 10 minutes, and then we go around and we figure out what's going on. What are our solutions to that? See what other people have done. That's just one thing we could do, but there's so many neat things that we can accomplish by coming together this way that you would not be able to do otherwise.
Yeah. And for the brothers that are listening or watching the video, how many times have you been listening and you would think, no, wait, but like, you're not considered, how about this? Because I have this experience that you don't know about. And you either have to go to the page and write something there, or you forget about it. Here is the moment where you have a chance to be sitting at the Masonic Roundtable. Like, this is the moment where you're going to be sitting there with us, and we're going to have a back and forth. We will be considering some of the things that we might not have considered because we don't have your life experience. So in a sense, the conference becomes better because you're there. So go now and reserve your seat. Brothers have been, from the moment we announced it, brothers have continuously been signing up. We have quorum, so this is going to happen. Now, the more brothers that sign up, the more exciting things that we'll be able to add. So make sure don't leave this for later. This is the one Masonic event you want to go to this year. So go tonight and reserve your seat.
Ever. The one Masonic event you want to go to ever.
Hashtag we are all TMR. We're going to need a bigger table.
All right.
Hashtag
Speaking of the George Washington Masonic Memorial, on Chris Hodap's blog, I wanted to highlight that the Quater Coronati Conference will be held in 2018 at the George Washington Masonic Memorial. That will be September 14th through 16th, 2018, and they are doing a call for papers. For those who don't know, Quater Coronati Lodge is the premier research lodge out of England, and we wanted to highlight the fact that we have some good points of contact there, obviously, and they're doing some really great stuff. This theme of the 2018 Quater Coronati Conference is Freemasons in the Transatlantic World during the long 18th century, 1688 to 1815. So if you've done research in this area, they want to hear from you. While they reach out to academia, they will accept papers that are well written by anyone who has research and interest in this area.
I thought you were going to say anyone that has a pulse, but okay.
No, they are highly selective.
Are they?
But because of that, you know that it's quality papers they're going to get.
Let's hope so. Let's hope so.
Mm-hmm. And because it's in the local area, I know of an academic lodge that's probably going to help them out to kind of get the ball rolling in 2018. I know a guy, and that guy is me.
I know another academic lodge that'll probably help too.
Good. I don't know of any. Just the Patriot Lodge. Moving along to the next topic, which is the Past Bastard. They actually had a really good article, which have been someone contributing it to you, RJ, because
yeah,
one about dues.
It was hilarious, right? So, I was hard up the other night, and I had to write a paper real quick to get it up on the Midnight Freemasons because, yes, I don't always have papers coming up, able to be published. So I wrote a quick something, and then the thing that I wrote was really based on some of the arguments we were having about dues and whatnot. And there's always this argument about you're making it too elitist by you're pricing good brothers out of the fraternity and all this stuff. And what is it, 2 days later, this article comes up, and I shared it on the Winding Stairs because I thought that's hilarious, this is what I was talking about yesterday. And somebody was like, oh, that's convenient. I know that's not how you sound, brother. I'm just doing it because and I had a good laugh. I was like, oh no, that's the last thing I need, right?
The title of this article is Grand Lodge of Nebraska directs Masons impoverished by dues to increase the NC state aid. Very well written because it talks about guys drinking their craft beer and riding in their big expensive pickup trucks and saying how they couldn't afford lodge dues going over $80. So.
Yeah, well, it's just funny because I think in the past, Masonic memes, again, another guy, I don't know who that is either. Masonic memes had this meme that was like a guy complaining about the dues, and then he's talking about he's going on his third cruise of the year. And I always thought it was just hilarious. I was at a lodge last night, and they were talking about Scott Duvall was talking about dues, a good friend and brother of mine, and at a point, some guys said some stuff, and I stood up and I said, "Did I get a show of hands in here who has cable TV?" And okay, all right, the 24 guys in this lodge right now all pay $95 more a month than you do for Masonry. What's the value proposition? But good
Did
on
you
the
get booed out of the lodge room?
no. I heard one faint like voice off in the corner that said, "That's a good point." It was probably Scott. But this article was pretty funny. They did a good job on that one, I think. There is that element too, right? Though, like when brothers can't pay their dues, we have that ability to like apply for aid for them, and the Grand Lodge pays half their dues, and the lodge pays the other half, so you can cover it anyway.
Yeah, and we've had many examples here in Northern Virginia where we know brothers who have hard times, and the master elects to remit that guy's dues for the year. It's not. There are ways to handle those scenarios that were brought up in the other discussions on
Right.
So just because you have to have a budget and run your building doesn't mean that you don't care about your brothers. Bottom line. The next and last news article for this week, we have another 300th anniversary, obviously lesser quality. This is coming out of UCLA. And you don't have to wait until June 24th. You can go on Saturday, March 4th, 2017, to the 6th International Conference at UCLA, where they're celebrating 300 years of Freemasonry, its meaning as its founding, and today, where they cover...
That sounds a lot like Freemasonry 300, Freemasonry's legacy, Freemasonry's future.
Hashtag first.
Just saying.
So, yeah, if you are in the California area and you want to go to this and the 300th celebration with us, you can do both. So check it out. We'll have a link on our show notes. But it's good to see other 300 activities going on. But I think Robert put it best. Most of these, we've been planning this for over a year, and a lot of these are just starting to pop up now.
Yeah, I mean, this is a quick anecdote for you guys behind the scenes. Over a year ago, I was sitting on the porch. It was summertime. I was having a beverage, and John and Jason were on, and we were all video conferencing, and Juan was at the park. And we were so excited talking about this. And what was so exciting wasn't like a lot of guys might think, these guys just want to get another conference or whatever and get up and do presentations or whatever. No, like from the get-go, this was, wouldn't it be cool if it's just like we do exactly what this fraternity promises to do and empower everybody on the level and have a say? And we've been talking about it forever. And of course, there is an element to this to me where I feel kind of selfish because I feel like I'm going to get to meet so many dudes that we've conversed with at the Masonic Memorial. Like, this is going to be emotionally charged for so many people. It's going to be so fantastic.
Can't wait. I remember how nervous we were just thinking about it. It's like, are you sure? Like, this is something we could do? And it's like, we were then like, we would say, oh, what could happen? And then that's impossible. It's like, no, why is it impossible? Couldn't we just get together and go over there? Worst case scenario, we went to DC and had a good time together. But so far, it's become bigger than that initial pessimistic idea that what if people don't support it? Yeah, people are going. People are coming from a lot of different states. I know brothers that are coming from Georgia. I know brothers that are coming from Florida.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, let me not get too excited. I'm gonna get too excited. We're gonna calm down.
All right. Let's go to our Masonic Monday on question. But wait.
There's not more this time.
There's not more because, as if you're just tuning in, we lost Nick last week. Nick has decided to move on to bigger and better things than the Masonic Roundtable, and we wish him the best. He has rededicated his focus to his lodge and wants to...
I was going to cut you off when you said he has gone on to bigger and better things, and I was going to say in heaven.
No, Nick has not died.
No, he's not dead.
We're not having a memorial service. But we're taking this time to reconsider. We've had some feedback of sometimes repeating the question if we miss it a week, or when the detail of the question goes on a little too long. So if you still want the Masonic Monday question
On Tuesday.
or any day.
Or any day, yes.
Send an email to masonicmonday@gmail.com, and that will get you on Nick's list. He is doing this as his education representative duties for the Grand Lodge, Minnesota, so that is not going to stop. But if you want to get on his email list, send an email to masonicmonday@gmail.com, and you'll continue to get those every week while we spend more time to talk about the topic.
And if you think you're going to miss Jason's reverb, we will make that a ringtone. So when you get your text messages, you get your on Tuesday all day long.
Yeah, I can do that.
Yeah, we'll make it happen.
I thought you were going to give them what they wanted right now, but no. Make them wait. So with that, we'll segue right into this week's topic, which is
On Tuesday.
Almost got away with it. My ear.
You
I'm
got
trying
trolled.
to moderate this thing very poorly.
Nice job.
Okay. Morality. Wheel of morality. Turn, turn, turn. Tell us a lesson that we should learn. If you're a millennial, you'll get that. This week, we wanted to talk about morality as it applies to the various philosophical and ethical constructs, and how then it applies to the system of Freemasonry. As you know, Freemasonry has been defined to be a system of morality veiled in allegory and illustrated by symbols. So what is this morality? We're not going to tell you everything because it's a secret. However, the definition of Freemasonry in that context is that we have a moral system in place that we do teach our candidates through the rite of initiation and through our degree system. But as we've been talking about for the past year or so, different jurisdictions treat morality differently. So we'll explore that in this week's episode. The next segue into the philosophy of morality really goes into does morality have or have to have, therefore be inseparable from a religion or religious construct in order to have a foundation in which to make ethical decisions or choosing between right and wrong. And so what we'll do is explore two primary constructs of moral ethics and then go into the details of how it applies to Freemasonry. The first one we'll start with is moral absolutism. Now, what moral absolutism is, as the name says, it's an absolute, meaning it's clearly defined, black or white. There is a clear definition of something that is right or wrong, and that it should be absolute in all cases, right? So some examples are, it maybe is it wrong to kill people? Well, the absolutist would say 100% of the time it's wrong to kill other people. Okay, well then what if you need to kill a villain in order to save people's lives? The moral absolutist would say if their absolute definition is it's 100% wrong to kill, then they would never kill the bad guy who's threatening the lives of 5 or more people.
Though through inaction, they could cause other folks to be killed, and then they're still violating Asimov's 3 laws of robotics.
But they are not doing it, right? So that's really, this is where the conversation starts to go into more detail, right? Because there's more causal effects with that. A related term to moral absolutism is consequentialism, right? Which is is there a consequence to your action or inaction? And then
Inaction is inherently action.
By choosing inaction,
correct,
you are creating you're making an action.
So it's like the tests that they have for the driverless cars. where you go through and you say, okay, if the car is going to crash, do you kill the driver or do you kill the pedestrian?
So now you've hit my favorite spot here, because I have pre-ordered the Tesla Model 3, which is coming out hopefully at the end of this calendar year in 2017. It will have all the hardware necessary, and all they have to do is flip the switch and make the car fully autonomous, meaning fully driverless, in the sense that you can take your hands off the wheel, take a nap, read a book, and the car will get you to your destination. Therefore, if and when there's an accident, because there are over 40, on average, about 40,000 fatalities annually in the United States of vehicle accidents. So it's a matter of when, not if. So when one of these cars, it's really a fancy, supercomputer with wheels, reaches a problem state where it has to now make a decision, the decision has to be programmed such that it needs to determine what the best option is given all of the sensory inputs. So if then it has to be programmed, not just make a decision. It has to be programmed to determine if saving the passenger in the car is worth more than saving the pedestrians it's about to hit.
So this is going to be the first car that is factory morally
sentient.
Absolute.
Not absolute, the other kind.
So
it's consequentialist.
Because it's going to depend on its...
I highly doubt there is programming that has even been made which allows a machine, in this sense, like a Tesla car. I think for a thought experiment, it's fun. But realistically, I don't think there's a world in which a car makes that decision. I think the car is just always programmed to avoid collision. I don't think it's ever going to take into consideration safety of the driver, due to the fact that this is the responsibility of the safety engineers of the vehicle. The safety engineers are to ensure that if you get in a head-on collision, you're safe, and the computing power of the car is such that it will avoid a collision. So I think they're going to meet in the middle.
I hate to break it to you, they already are programming these questions right now. It's not a matter of safety. It's a matter of what to do in certain
Really?
It is in the Google car, and it is in the Tesla car as well.
It's also a matter of liability.
Right.
Yeah. And if veering one way will likely result in the death of one person, but veering the other way will result in the death of two or more people, there has to be a decision made in a split second to kill one person or one person at risk.
Right.
That's going to be a fun lawsuit.
It is. and then so who's at fault? Is it the software engineer who's never driven in the car?
Yeah.
Right.
The good thing here is that unlike us humans, when one incident happens, it feeds the entire network, so that same mistake is never repeated again on the entirety of the network.
Yeah, so I don't want to get into a thing on this, but inherently, you're going to run into the firearms question as well. There are lots of accidents in which people are killed with firearms, and if even one person is killed, which has already happened, with this new car, you're going to see that legislation.
And this gets back to Masonry, because taking a self-driving car to a lodge in Texas where it's filled with brethren who can bring firearms into the lodge room, then you're going to have problems.
Okay, so let's finish out absolutism. Many religions do have morally absolutist positions. So there are certain things in many texts, the Quran, the Bible, that says that there are things that are black and white, right? Thou shalt not kill, right? It's a perfect example. That is a 10 commandment. And then that leads to a whole aspect of theology of, is there a hierarchy of moral absolutes? If there's many sins, which are the bad sins and which are the good, the less bad sins, right? So then it breaks down right away, because now you don't have absolutes. What are the absolutes that get you into heaven or not? Which leads us right into the next ethical conundrum, which is moral relativism. Moral relativism says that there are no absolutes, and that every decision must be made based on a set of variables, to include passions, sentiments, societal impacts, various things. So now let's take the Tesla car as an example. Well, what if the car has to choose between crashing the car and killing you, or killing a pedestrian, but the car knows that the pedestrian was, a mass murderer? Okay, so now things are not equal. There's additional variables added to this set of options, and so now there is a relative weight based on which decision it should make. So then the next question comes: could a car be programmed to take into account an infinite number of variables, right? The wealth of the person it's about to hit, or the wealth of the person driving. It can detect that the pedestrian has cancer, but you don't. There's an unlimited amount of options.
What is interesting, though, is in those instances, we're talking about a car, right? And ultimately, a car is programmed. So these values are determined by humans. So to get back to that, though, in the human sense, give them your Charlie dilemma.
Oh, the trolley dilemma. So there's another ethical problem. It's made up, but it helps you determine what is the best thing to do ethically, and then it determines what kind of person you are. So you can go on Wikipedia and go find the trolley problem. What it is, it's a hypothetical scenario where you are standing near a train track, and there is a train that's on the loose, and it's going down the tracks, and it will run over 5 people tied to the track if they if left to its own accord. But you are standing right next to the switch track. So if you grab the handle, switch the train tracks, it will reroute the speeding trolley and go to a different set of tracks where only one person is tied to the track, killing the one person. Do you make the ethical decision to, by your action, kill one person to save 5 lives through inaction? What say you guys? Juan?
If it's only one person on one side of the track and 5 on the other, if it's up to me, I would switch that sucker and send it down to where there's only one person.
Pull the lever.
Yeah, I'm also a pull the lever kind of guy. But then we got it to talking about how this was relative, right? Because this is, do you know something bad about those 5 people? Are they convicts?
Right. If they're 5 convicts versus the 1 pope.
Right.
Yep. Then heard an interesting example where, well, if you truly believe in fate or predetermination, then actually your inaction is allowed, because it was meant for those 5 people to be killed, because that was their time, and therefore your inaction, you're not held responsible from your own morals. Which, again, the same scenario, 2 different views: the utilitarian or the side that says, it's not my problem to intervene. So how does this relate to Masonry? Let's rope this in. Because we are a moral society, let me ask the 3 of us here, the 4 of us, is there such a thing as moral absolutes as they apply to Freemasonry? Given the fact that we are a non-sectarian or organization that accepts people of multiple faiths, multiple religions.
So that's a really hard question, because I would say, okay, if we aren't looking to religion for a defined moral absolute, excuse me,
which we should.
where are we going to look? And naturally, I go to the tenets of the order and the Masonic ritual. Well, of course, you can't necessarily define an absolute by the Masonic ritual because, at least across Freemasonry, because the rituals differ. So,
and oftentimes is clearly colored by religion. So you can see the influence of religion and the crafting of the morality, can say, with the Masonry. Now, one thing that came to mind instantly when we started talking about morality and religion within Freemasonry, some people believe that only through religious study can an individual attain a moral sense or attain a moral compass. I personally argue that it isn't so. That is my personal belief, and I have my reasons to believe it. One example that I think illustrates this is the fact that we can meet within one roof people from different religions, even people who have, moral absolutes in their minds, and we are able to agree upon a morality that is common throughout all of these different religions or beliefs, cultures. So this morality happens to be independent of specific practices.
Now, so let me play devil's advocate.
But we're getting into problems with that today with certain jurisdictions.
Well, so here we go. Here is a counter argument that I have heard in various Masonic forums. If the absolutism says that in Freemasonry we should let the Holy Bible be the rule and guide of our faith, and in many jurisdictions in the United States, it requires at least the King James Version of the Holy Bible, or just the Old Testament, New Testament, then therefore many brothers have argued that despite what's going on in society, that if we are taught as an absolute the Holy Book should be our rule and guide of our faith, then literal interpretation of that book becomes the foundation of absolutism and Masonry.
So then you should totally be like, killing people who wear mixed clothing and
so in adulterers, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So just to kind of touch on that, Albert Einstein had a quote, and he said, and this relates in the sense that there is the idea that people say without religion there cannot be a defined moral code. Einstein said, a man's ethical behavior should be based effectually on sympathy, education, and social ties and needs. No religious basis is necessary. Man would indeed be in a poor way if he had to be restrained by fear of punishment and hopes of a reward after death. And this is something we've touched on before as far as my own personal belief of why there is a need for a belief in deity for the craft, right? Like I think we touched on this on God on the petition. And the problem I have is that we are supposed to be a progressive moral society or a moral system. And being progressive, that idea as we understand it today tends to view things and documents in a living way. So I think ultimately morality in the lodge is relative always, or at least in terms of relative with changes that occur within society as we move along.
Yeah, and to add to that point, if you have an individual who takes the Holy Bible as the moral absolute guide for their lives, okay, that's what they believe, right? If you were to say, Okay, well, in the book of Leviticus, it talks that if your daughter comes to you or your son comes to you and tells you, let's go there and praise these other gods, you are supposed to take her to the public square and be the first one to begin stoning her to death. Now, their argument would be, no, but that's not the case anymore, because now there's a new covenant. Then it is morally relative. By definition, it becomes a new morality. So you can no longer be a moral absolutist in that regards, because by your own argument, you're saying, well, that doesn't count anymore. There's a new plan. It's the New Testament. So you can't, it's like one negates the other.
So a question here, is Freemasonry inherently a failed organization then? If it is supposed to be a system of morality, yet morality in and of itself is relative even within the fraternity.
I wouldn't consider it failed. I would consider certain jurisdictions failed. And not always so. It's not a perpetual problem in jurisdictions. It's a perpetual problem within the nature of human beings who rise to the occasion of being the Grand Master of a state. The Grand Master is, in a sense, a dictator of sorts, and the Grand Lodge operates under his authority, and he is free to make his proclamations and his edicts every year.
He is the Pope of Freemasonry.
Yeah, and so it falls on the morality or the grand the grand consciousness, if you will, the constituency of that Grand Lodge to pursue making sure that the people who are being brought in to lead the fraternity are leading it in a way that is relative to them as far as their morals are concerned.
Yeah.
Are we failing as far as morality goes? No, I think largely we are an example. Just like for the most part, we have very many friends who are religious, and they would say that their preachers and their priests are upstanding members of the community, and that they are people who they look to for moral justifications and moral affirmation. But a few rotten apples wherever you go. There are in Freemasonry, there are in religions, there are in communities. That happens, and those are unfortunate, but I don't think that those maybe lead to the failure.
And one thing that I see all the time is that people would often completely erase any kind of positivity that comes out of one individual when they fail morally in one area of their lives. Like in the example I have is when you put your faith on an individual, let's say it's a religious leader or a political leader or someone who is your mentor, and you look up to them as a guide for morality. They could have 99 contributions to your life that push you to become a more moral individual, a more ethical, upright individual. They screw up one time, and we can't discount the rest of the value that perhaps you've derived from them. So, I just say that as a word of caution, because in Spanish, in the Bible says, "Hay de aquel que pone su confianza en otro hombre," or woe to the man who puts his trust in another man. And the reason is because you put all your trust into one individual, there is a chance that you will be disappointed. You'll be led astray at one point or another. So you still have to put your trust elsewhere and, benefit from the good things that individuals can provide and reject that which is detrimental to your growth.
I'll add to that and say that we are a system of relative morality. Why? Because we're a progressive science. we're taught that, and we have initiatic lessons that teach those set of progressive moral lessons. And here's a proof, right? If we are, there's proof that we're relative, in the sense of, on all of our petitions we've talked about in a previous episode. In Virginia, we ask all our to-be candidates, were you ever convicted of a felony? I take that back. In Virginia, it's actually more broad and says, have you ever been charged with a criminal offense? Other petitions have, have you been convicted of a felony? So there's a relative aspect of what makes a good person, a good candidate for the craft, right?
Yeah, it's true. Illinois is, have you ever had a felony?
Right, that's it.
But that doesn't that doesn't bar you from membership. Essentially, the investigation committee can talk to you about it, and they don't talk to anybody else about it. They talk amongst each other and decide. And then each one of them is required to individually inform the master of a yay or a nay. And then the master just says, even if the felony says, yes, we had a felony on his petition, there's no discussion of it. It's just the investigation committee recommends a yes. And that's it. There's no discussion of the felony, because you're basing that on the trust of the individual. But they have that relative authority to look at that felony and say, well, this guy beat the crap out of some dude who was sleeping with his wife. That's human.
Or he's drunk and disorderly, conduct 30 years ago, something like that.
So last question for tonight. Can we separate religious-based moral laws from absolute moral laws as they apply to society as a whole? Do societal laws have any jurisdiction over any moral takeaways we get from Freemasonry?
I'm not sure I understand the question.
So
consult the United States Constitution.
So, right. Using the argument where if a brother believes that the Bible is the moral absolute, and then we have the Supreme Court decision on homosexuality, then does that brother's view of Freemasonry override any jurisdiction of having homosexuals be members of the craft?
So, in the installation ritual for the master, which is open to the public, you can go and watch it. The master is charged not only with abstaining from any conspiracies against the government, but he is also charged with upholding the government's laws. And as part of that charge to the members of a lodge at the officer installation, I would say that one who does not uphold the societal laws could be found in derelict of his duty as a Freemason.
So that one's easy for Virginia. We have that as the laws trump Masonic morality.
So even here, right? So in Illinois, I'm going to quote a piece of ritual that is not coded. It's out there. So as a citizen, you're enjoined to be exemplary in the discharge of your public duty by never proposing or countenancing any act which may have a tendency to subvert the peace or the good order of society, by paying due obedience to the country under whose protection you live, and by never losing sight of the allegiance you owe to your country. So by paying due obedience to the laws under whose protection you live, that's all Masons.
Yep. And it doesn't mean be cheery in the execution of these laws. You don't have to love the laws in order for you to obey them and subject yourself to them. It is your responsibility as civilized society to hold yourself accountable to those laws. Doesn't mean you have to be super happy about them, and there might be something you can do in order to try to change them if you feel that they are immoral in a sense. But I don't know, like that homosexuality one, I just recently had a conversation with a brother that I respect immensely, and not his only, but one of his strongest argument was biblical. He was saying, well, you put your hand up on the Bible. Doesn't the Bible say that homosexuality is an abomination to God?
That's a hotly debated topic, by the way.
I know, but and that was his main argument. And okay, I'll give you that. That's what your religious conviction says about the matter. But it is not the only one within the fraternity. There are brothers that I've sat in lodge with that are homosexuals who are upright men, who are honorable men. Should they be kicked out
And
of
some of them are no doubt. I mean, we've talked about this. I mean, almost ad nauseum, but I know. I think like not like I know. I can't say like I know a ton of homosexual gentlemen. I have maybe 6, 10 friends of mine who are, of the people that I know and I've hung out with, and they're all Christians, evangelical Christians.
My God can beat up your God.
So one quick thing about morality as well, and as it relates to, abiding by the laws of your society, we actually, as part of the Masonic Roundtable, we get people emailing the show all the time from jurisdictions that have outlawed the practice of Freemasonry, saying, I live in X Middle Eastern country, X African country. I want to be a Freemason. And I say, don't. You, as a Freemason, you are required and you are expected to uphold the laws of your society. And if being a Freemason puts you in direct contradiction with upholding the laws of your society, then you clearly should not be a Freemason.
Or move to where that is not a crime.
Yes, and after you've moved there, then go forth and do good things.
Yeah.
Okay, there's been some great questions on social media, so let's cut over to our Facebook wall and see what's showing up there.
All right, so I'm going to start with a meme because every good discussion should start with a meme. So we've got the Masonic memes, gentleman who said, "Newly initiated brethren, morality is doing right, no matter what you are told. Now, you'll all do as you're told. Go forth and do good things."
Yeah. That's throwing this out there. Masonic memes, whoever you are, thanks, man, or lady. If it's I don't know, but you've been tossing them up on WCY's wall for like 3-4 years, and every time I see it, I try to reshare it. Good stuff, man.
Yeah, it's just good stuff. So Mike Hambrecht, our faithful intern, calling the shots from behind the Facebook curtain, mentions my comment on calling the Grand Master the Pope of Freemasonry. He says it's interesting. It implies that he's in direct communication, since that's the technical belief of Catholics with their Pope, with deity, and therefore cannot be wrong. So I would say that I personally chose that wording very carefully because in a lot of jurisdictions, my own notwithstanding, the Grand Master's rule is law.
Cannot be wrong.
Mm-hmm. He cannot be wrong.
That's interesting. I think I don't know. I always just think about like the Grand Master is at a point. He can't be wrong, but at the same time, I feel like it's just the luck of the draw. Who are you going to get? And it could be Fidel Castro. It could be
not anymore.
Well, in a lot of jurisdictions, you have 7 years to figure out who you're going to get because it's a progressive line.
Yeah, it is pretty progressive. Even though it's like we're holding an election, but it's progressive. But just in case. But then you have Colorado. Colorado had that big upset a few years back.
Yeah, Arkansas.
Yeah.
So anyway, Brother Alex Powers from the Historical Light podcast mentions, so with the ability of candidates to take their obligations on a holy book of their choosing, do we have the potential of varying views on morality here?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely, without question.
And even if they have a set of beliefs, their morality could be derived from something else. Like there are hundreds of decisions that you make during your year that have nothing to do with your religion, and they are moral decisions nonetheless.
Yeah, like there's a whole argument here that I'm not going to get into, but like, 60 to 70% of the things you learn as moral choices are actually programmed into you at a point before you have, when all you have is id and super ego. But
And I wanted to mention there's a book I really enjoyed called The Moral Landscape, and in it, its author Sam Harris, he tries to explain that people often say, well, science has no place in morality. Science can tell you how things happen, but it can't tell you what should happen. And his argument is that if we
a
think
moral relativist would agree with that.
Yeah, and this goes further in saying that if you think of morality as the attempt to avoid suffering and misery for humans and for living things, sentient beings, because part of morality is also affected by how we treat animals, even though they might not be human, because we don't have the same kind of moral reservations for inanimate objects like rocks or dirt or something that we don't perceive as having emotions. But his argument is that there is, if morality is that pursuit of avoiding suffering and pain, you can imagine a world in which you can inflict the absolute most pain and suffering upon an individual. That will be the deepest side of immorality. And in a world where there's absolutely no pain, no suffering, by the decisions will be the other extreme of morality. That would be the moral decisions. Then he explains that life would then be a moral landscape where you'll have peaks and valleys, where the deepest valleys are perhaps the Holocaust and massacres. And then you have some mid mounds that perhaps are difficult decisions like switching the trolley. And then you'll have some really high moral peaks where it's an absolute good decision that avoids suffering and pushes the well-being of humanity forward. So in that example, you have a landscape that is just peppered with highs and lows, and you can make almost a scientific decision of whether this is good or bad. Even if it's a new technology that has no mention in the Bible, no mention in the Quran, you can still make a moral decision based on those kind of paradigms or rules.
yeah,
So if you haven't read it, I encourage you to read that book.
I think it comes back to, like I said, what Einstein was saying. It's part of your morality comes from having empathy or sympathy.
Mm-hmm. I respected Einstein until I saw that picture with him with his flip-flops. Google if you haven't seen it.
Better than Crocs. So I tend to kind of fall in line with the statement that, I think science has to be a part of your moral judgments. I mean, it's the more information you have, the more aware you are and better able you are able to make moral judgments. And in that sense, it really comes down to me as being a bit of a moral relativist in this sense.
I totally agree with you, Jason.
And that's about all we got for social media, John.
Great. Let's wrap it up. Let's starting with Juan.
This is a topic that, of course, is going to make some people really happy, others a little bit upset, but either way, we want to hear your opinion. Who do you agree with in this discussion? Is there something we said that ruffled your feathers? Let us know why, and if you can give us a good example or a good reason for why it ruffled your feathers, it will help us have more empathy or sympathy with your point of view. and perhaps it can change our perception of what moral or morality is. If you have a different way of describing what morality is in the context of Freemasonry, let us know. If you have sources, give links on the page, help us all find common ground where we can agree. But what I would leave brothers is, what I want to leave brothers with is that your morality, I personally believe that it's of course relative, and it's something that is constantly being discovered. As new problems arise, new decisions have to be made, some very difficult, and morality plays a part in them. Even if there's no precedent for making those decisions, morality has to be taken into account. And as we move forward in life, we will be discovering new areas of morality. So it's important that we keep an open mind and don't box ourselves into a prescribed set of beliefs that may have perhaps prevent us from being sympathetic or empathetic towards our fellow human beings. So engage in the conversation. Go to the MasonicRoundtable.com, and after you purchase your ticket to the show in June, then go to our post and add your comments, your 2 cents there. We'd definitely love to hear that. And finally, brothers, I have created several things on the Winding Stairs. Some brothers were asking if I could make T-shirts for the lodges. Some wanted for fundraisers, but some just wanted it just to show the support for their lodge. So free of charge, I'm designing some shirts for brother lodges. So just go to thewindingstairs.com/my lodge shirt, and I'll just fill out the form, and I'll make some of those for you. And we've had brothers from pretty much every state now have shirts in this style. And just check it out. If you haven't seen it, go to thewindingstairs.com, and you can't miss it. Thank you all for your support, brothers.
Thank you, Juan. Robert.
So again, Juan said it. If you had an issue with anything we talked about tonight, that's good. Like it's really important to have diverse opinions related to these topics, because that's how a healthy discussion works. It's interesting to note that at times, in certain instances, we think of absolute moral decisions. And then when we get more details, then we become even more absolute. But the very idea that we're getting more details is relative. We're making a relative decision based on an absolute. There's kind of an odd parallel I'll draw with Aristotle, Plato, Pyle. It's the infinite division problem, where, and I'm going back to 5th grade here, sorry. One of them debated, you can cut a piece of bread in half, and then you can cut that half in half, and that half in half, and that half in half, all the way into infinitum. And the other said, you can only cut it down so small, and then it's done. Well, we know that it's infinite now, right? And I think that's relative. It kind of lends itself to this relative argument that no matter what, all morality is technically relative, in my view, because the more information you get about it changes your outcome. So it's just an interesting and great conversation. I know we kind of derailed a little bit at the beginning when we started talking about, we were nerding out on cars and technology and AI, but this is what we do all the time. So it's, but I think we brought it back nicely and we tied it together thanks to Jason's efforts. But if you like this stuff, please keep coming back. Again, this is why we do it, for these great topics, these great discussions, and the great stuff that's happening on the social media pages. So check that out. I want to see you guys in DC, so don't let me down, please. I can look really sad. So, anyway, thanks for watching the show. Thanks for diving into these topics. And this is what makes you guys part of the 10%. Which is pretty awesome. So if you like Masonic Podcast, check out my show, Whence Came You, 9:30 Sunday nights, and I hope you enjoyed that 10 for 10 Worshipful Master questions. The next one that's coming out, I'm going to give you this big announcement. Jason Richards is our next Worshipful Master, where we have 10 questions. It's going to be fantastic. You're not going to want to miss it. So check it out. Thanks very much.
I will probably piss off some people.
Just forewarned, yeah, that's for sure. Jason made some comments that
with proper caveats, though. That's the big thing. You know, I took a lot of things from my direct experience and said, look, according to my direct experience, this is what I've seen. So please keep that in mind when you listen to it, and try to give it a second listen before you send me hate mail, and then send me the hate mail anyway.
Yeah. And then send it to me so I can edit it for Grammar First. You guys make all kinds of mistakes when we're mad. Anyway, just kidding. Love all of you guys. Thanks so much, and I'll shoot it back to John. Thanks.
Yeah, Jason said on the show that actually he believes that Freemasonry is morally absolute. So that's going to get everybody stirred up. No, you don't really think that way. What do you think, Jason?
So I did mention that I fall into the bucket, broadly speaking, of moral relativism. And so when you look at, I'm going to go back to something that John and I were talking about with Eric Diamond on the concept of pardes and the study of it's really a Hebrew way of studying texts and scriptures. And so me being a Christian, I was brought up with only the first part of pardes, which is the literal meaning of the scripture. And I didn't until much later start to look into the allegorical meaning, the contextual meaning, and then also the hidden meaning behind that. So if you look at scripture as more than just a literal interpretation as it pertains to morality, then you necessarily have to be a moral relativist. If you are looking at anything allegorically or looking at anything for contextual meaning versus literal meaning, God forbid even hidden meanings within certain texts, then there are ideas that are inherently going to come into conflict. And, we see that with two different creation stories. We see that with two different flood stories and multitude other accounts, especially in the New Testament, which differ from each other. So for me, saying, well, since I am a Christian, Christian values are absolute, I think it's disingenuous, because there's again debate as to what those values are based on how you interpret your source material. So for me, I really see the only feasible way for me to approach morality is to approach it as a relativist. So it's just interesting, and really that's something that I've really grappled hard with, over the past decade, and before that it was just kind of like, okay, whatever. But it's an interesting concept, and I love the fact that Freemasonry is a vessel that slaps me upside the head with really difficult questions. And that is one of the biggest things I've gotten out of the fraternity as far as my own faith and spiritual life is concerned, is I'm constantly interfacing with brethren of different opinions and different worldviews, and they're asking me really hard questions that I don't know the answers to. And that's what keeps me coming back. So I hope the fact that we're doing this for you keeps you coming back. So please come back next week. We're going to have another good show for you, of course. And we're looking forward to seeing you in June. So take care. Please let us know if you're coming. Let us know when you're coming. And we're looking forward to hanging out with you.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Yeah, you stole mine as well. If we're going to have even, let's just say all jurisdictions have the King James Version of the Bible, then that means that it's not left to interpretation, right? And as we know, religious wars were fought literally over interpretation of even the same text. So unless the specific interpretation can be given over every single verse, which is impossible, then obviously there's derivation there that makes all morality relative. But I'll even go a step further and say that our craft in the mainstream United States has a clear relative delineator, and that is we allow no atheists. And so by having an absolute rule that we are going to preclude, although already might be a good member of society, a good man, the fact that they do not believe in God, we are now implying a relative set of morality over someone else, but that may bring something else to the table. So with that, I enjoyed this conversation. I learned a lot. Thank you, Jason, for doing the research for the show. See you in DC in June. That's all I got. Thanks very much for watching, and keep searching for more light. Have a good one.